Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. This edition of the Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by John Deere. I've got Greg Machinery Pete Peterson on to talk about what's happening in the marketplace. Greg, how you doing today?
I'm doing well, Casey. How about you?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Just trying to got a little cold spell. Now we're right back to 55 degrees. So it's the I guess we're in the new banana belt out here in the
65. That is banana belt, man. I'm moving to Scotts Bluff, man.
Don't hold your breath because it's bound to change the other way before too long. So we're due for a blizzard yet. So I'm still waiting for that to happen. How things up here next to woods?
Just been cold. Good old fashioned Minnesota winter. A little light on the snow. I think we're down 8 to 9 inches here, southeast Minnesota. But very cold. So it's, yeah. And of course, we feel for our friends down across the Mid-South there. I'm supposed to, I don't know, you're going to be down in Nashville for Top Producer?
Yeah, I'll be down there next week for that. I'm actually in Raleigh, North Carolina right now, and they were in between two storms. One dropped like 10 inches to the west and 12 inches to the east or something like that. It was just a mess. So down here, that's like epic. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if they have snow shovels this far south, but it's
shuts it down. Are people moving around okay around there, Raleigh, or is it pretty much?
It's they only had like 3 or 4 inches of snow and it had a pretty good melt. I guess it got pretty well, melt the stuff off, but it's definitely colder here than I've ever seen it when I've been in the North Carolina area. So
I read Nashville that a lot of folks have been without power for over a week. That's so we feel for them down there. Hopefully they'll get straightened out here soon.
Yep, it's things like this happen in areas that you don't typically see that kind of weather come through. It's
right.
It seems like it's more common now than it's been in the past. Like you see a lot of storms come through like this. So
we both should have got into the weather business, Casey. You'd be right, just like baseball. You'd be 300 hitter, you're Hall of Fame, I guess.
Hall of Famer, baby. You know what I mean? Yep. You gotta be right 3 out of 7 times, and you're good.
That's right.
60% of the time, it works every time, Greg. Yeah, so.
Oh man, we could go down our friend Aaron. The movie. What movie is that from? 60% of the time. That's what is that reference from? That's really bugging me now.
It's Anchorman. Yeah.
Oh, it's Anchorman. There you go. Will Ferrell. That's his buddy Brian Fantana, right? Yeah.
With the clone.
The cologne. What was that? What was that cologne? Was it Panther?
Sex Panther.
Yeah. Pure gasoline.
That's funny. It has real chunks of.
I don't know if there's any deaf in that. Yeah, that's Anchorman. That's San Diego. Yeah, that's
San Diego.
San Diego. Folks, you never know where it's going to go with Casey and Pete when we're on Moving Iron Podcast. We have fun.
Yeah.
This is just like going to an auction. You never know what you're going to wind up talking about.
Never know what's going to happen when you get there. Speaking of which, you got one coming up. You've been watching here. You got a Wheeler auction coming up. What do you see on there that's striking your attention?
Well, I actually just had one this past Saturday. Kirby and Chaz down there on January 31st. Big sale, 3 rings. Big fan of Wheeler. They do a great job down there. Of course, a lot of late model equipment, so I was kind of interested in how stuff would sell. Just a couple of highlights. I mean, the highest priced item on the sale was a 25 model 8R 410. I believe it was pretty loaded. ILS, EVT, transmission, nice rig, 544 hours, and came in at $411,000, which when I was looking at that, that's actually, and certainly we'd expect it being a 25 model. We're not seeing a ton of those hit the auction market, but that's the highest auction price on an 8R 410 in 22 months. Walking it back to March of 24, which was right about when we started to see dealers really get aggressive and pile stuff onto the auction market. And I also looked, Casey, the current average dealer ad price on a 25 model 8R 410, for what it's worth, just as a frame of reference, is $500,000, just about $501,000. So again, $411 hard cash, $501,000 retail on the dealer lot. Comes out with my machinery repeat ratio math, it was like 82%, which has historically been a sign of a kind of a stabilish to kind of maybe even rising a little bit used market, which is what we've been talking about since November.
Yep.
So that was one I watched.
Kind of to that point real quick, Greg, I mean, from the same thing that I talked about here, my 120% rule, and when auction value is retail value is 120% auction value, that falls into that range. So
Right.
That's a stable market as far as I'm concerned.
Right. And I think, like, again, because back in 24 into 25, we just saw such volume of late model stuff at auction, and that's really pulled back. We talked about it a couple weeks ago, but our data has shown, I think, like it's either 51 or 55% drop in 0 to 3-year-old tractors sold at auction in 25 versus 24. So it's kind of bleeding into 26 here. But a couple other items. Combine, they had a 20 model Case IH 8250. It wasn't really low hours, 1,663 engine hours, went for 215. And as I was poking through our auction price data, I found it interesting, Casey. It went back, again, 18, a little over a year ago at the end of 24. And we saw at that point a 22 model 8250. These are both four-wheel drive. And that one had similar hours, about 1,725 hours, went for 213, close to me in Grand Meadow, Minnesota. So you're 15 months later, selling for just a hair more money, hard cash at auction on a combine, a 5-year-old combine. And the last one that really kind of I found interesting was a 9RX 490. It was a 23 model, 709 hours, and it sold for $403,000 on Saturday with Wheeler. And if I looked back a year and a half ago, same auction company, Wheeler, had a sale in Carthage, Illinois, pretty close to Paris, Missouri, same kind of general area. And that one was, at that time, was a 23 model, 498 hours, went for 385. So when we talk about, even on these late model ones, a little stronger than they were, I think that's a pretty good example there. 18 months ago, it went for 385. Last Saturday for 403.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just another place to look at on the chart where we're seeing stability come in and it's getting stronger, and we're starting to see things kind of settle back down. And you're going to see stability, especially with you look at the amount of equipment on the space right now. I mean, there's not a lot of 1-year-old equipment. We've talked about that several times on here.
Right.
That 1-year-old equipment. Last time I need to go pull those numbers and look through them again. But there were less than 900 combines, 1-year-old combines, all make all models. And if you're not familiar with the market, you're probably thinking, well, that seems like a lot. But typically, that's like 2,500 or 3,000 combines. Like that's
Right.
a significant amount.
Right.
And right now, it's a bit of an inverted pyramid. Typically, it stops at the top and works its way down. Now we're seeing at the bottom to the top is where the kind of the middle of that is where you're seeing the biggest bulk of inventory. That's the 3 to 5-year-old stuff, but that's also the fastest stuff coming off the market. And I think what you're talking about here, Greg, points to that, where those values are at, and where you're at. And I would throw this out there. Anyone listening to this, if you're in the market to buy something right now, and you're wanting to find something that's in that 23 to 20 range, you found what you're looking for, better start making some moves on it, because I think that stuff is going faster every month. We're seeing more and more stuff come off the marketplace, and especially what we saw come off especially after going through December, typically see things slow up, and that specific band of machinery, that 3 to 5-year-old stuff, hasn't really slowed down any, and it's just other things have kind of slowed down a little bit, but that band is still pretty strong right now.
That'd be interesting too, Casey. You've been doing it a long time, monitoring things. I've been monitoring, 36 plus years, and it's, this 24 and 25 model stuff, especially the 25s. It'll be interesting to follow that through over time.
Yeah.
Because there weren't many of them sold. So if you typically are a 5-year-old buyer, this is where it's going to get interesting, because that piece of the pipeline is pretty narrow. Like you say, there's only 900 now. And when it was like double to triple plus. So, farmers are very smart. And I think they're starting to look at this and extrapolate forward and go, okay, this being the case, and times aren't great right now. So what really concerns me is that if we go forward, we all hope corn and beans go up and stay up soon. But I'm starting to think that whenever that happens, again, we've talked about it, but I think we're going to have 2021 all over again, where you've got a kind of a supply issue, and both on getting your hands on a new model, which would take time to ramp up again, but then also on the used market when, like you said, it's so pinched on those 1-year-old ones right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you look at this order writing period that's coming up here for the manufacturers. There's not going to be any real difference from what we saw last year as far as new sales go. And again, so I think you got 2 years in there where you're going to have a bit of a dry spot in there that's going to be a little bit different than what people have been used to. And that being said, I think the longer that we keep going down this path, it changes the way things look. I feel like we're resetting the marketplace to an inventory level that is going to be digestible by the marketplace, right? I think there's going to be a lot of stuff coming through and those kind of things. And again, I think it's that we've talked about this too, where I think we've transformed the market into more of a construction kind of a company model. When you look at that, when you look at you're selling new, and there's a couple trades that kind of come in there, and then they're kind of washing out. And Ritchie Brothers plays a big part of that on the construction side as well on the ag side too. You start looking at some of the private sell stuff that you see on that thing. So it's a bigger, broader space. And if you go out and look at what's on Facebook Marketplace, for example, that's a good place to kind of judge what the overall marketplace looks like. A lot of stuff that's listed on there is that I would say not probably. I would go 5 to 10-year-old stuff really falls in there. There's obviously some older stuff out there too, but there's a lot of 5 to 10-year-old stuff that kind of falls into that mix. And I think I kind of feel like that's going to be a new normal when you start looking at how things play out.
I think you're right. It's a new normal. In fact, I've over my career, Casey, I've often advised younger farmers to really, again, God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, but listen to your dad and your grandpa. This is the first time I've ever kind of hedged against that a little bit and say, in my anecdotal way, saying, yeah, value what your grandpa or your dad or uncle or your grandma said they went through in those past down cycles, but strictly used equipment wise, this is different, like you said. And I think this is what the manufacturers collectively and dealers wanted through past down cycles to get this more efficient. And it doesn't matter if we like it or not. This, I think, like you said, this is the new model, and you have to get your head around the realities of it. So what you said earlier, if you're thinking of buying again, and it doesn't make sense with everything in your past as a farmer. Like if things are going to be slow this year, I'll probably have a better, used values might drop a little bit. We've been seeing these auction prices hold, and I'm not blowing smoke. I'm just relaying what we're seeing. And auction prices fell like a rock throughout 24, and then they've just solidified, and now they're kind of starting to inch up a little bit. So I think you're right. I think it's different now.
Yeah. It's going to be interesting to watch what happens and how things play out. But I think at the end of the day, ultimately, you as a buying public, as you're looking at your next purchases and what that might look like for you on your operation, is what's your plan look like today? Because I think if you're looking to buy something at the end of the year and you're going to go start making those buying decisions in that last quarter of the year, you might need to adjust that a little bit and start having maybe a plan A through B, or a plan A, B, C kind of in place that's going to broaden that. Because I'm just watching the stuff that's happening here. And Greg, you've done this for a long time. The first stuff that gets taken off the marketplace is the stuff everybody wants, right? It's that cherry stuff. It's the good stuff. It's the low-hour stuff. It's the super clean stuff. And then you start working your way down to where you're at. And the problem that when things like this happen in my career, what I've watched happen is when all this stuff, the cherry stuff's gone and it's priced at X. It's amazing at the stuff that would be considered average. It just kind of fills back into that same spot to that same price point. It's just you're not buying the cherry stuff anymore. You're buying the average stuff, which is the new cherry stuff, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But the prices don't really fluctuate. The machinery just moves up to the next, kind of fills that void where that price point was, and then you start seeing that kind of work its way through.
I've seen that exact thing play out in the auction market, Casey, when, on hour ranges, whether it's a 7-year-old tractor or a 15-year-old or older. What used to be like, oh, that's too high a hour range to get the premium dollars. Exactly what you just said. If it's in good condition now, doesn't matter if it's got higher hours. It's shifting.
Yeah, it's shifting, and it'll continue to shift, and it's going to be as these next couple of years. I really think through the end of the decade, as these next years kind of come into play, just because of what we've seen happen, and with the price of equipment the way it is, you're locking people into a box, right? And it's going to be hard for people to move in and out of those boxes, especially when you start looking at a new piece and the things that come with that. So it's just going to be interesting to watch what happens. I think if we see this again, this order, the same kind of new sell in 27 and 28, that really changes the landscape greatly as we work our way through what goes through the end of the decade here.
Yeah, I would say, I think you're right. I mean, if sales in 25 were depressed, even 24 was down, 25 was down more, 26 is not looking rosy. If you we went through 27, same depressed level of new sales, even drifting into 28, boy, now that skinny patch we're just starting to identify in the 25 models.
Yeah.
You could have that skinny patch be 25 to 28 models into the used market. And now you're talking, over my 36 and a half years, I would not have seen that before. That length of just nothing.
Right.
And again, that's why I guess it was middle of December when we saw that AF11 25 model sell for $841 and change up in Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
I was like, what? But on the hard cash auction market, what are your other options? That was the first one. That's what it brought. So,
yep, for sure. All right, let's talk a little bit about yesterday. EPA came out and what their EPA guidelines, what it might look now on DEF. Basically, if the machine, long story short, the machine is having an issue that's a DEF related issue, you can disconnect that. They painted the picture out. The EPA painted a picture out that this was something that was always been available, and it's news to me. I didn't know that was available because we would have fixed a lot of problems that way when it was at the dealership. But basically, what it says is if the machine's broke due to a DEF problem, then you can unhook the DEF, but you just have to put it back to that original order. A little bigger issue than just unhooking it and going. Like there's quite a bit of stuff that goes into that to make that happen. But all that being said, they've opened the door up to how does DEF and how does the emission standards things play into what we see in equipment. Hypothetically, next week they're supposed to come out and have some kind of a big a big announcement on DEF. I don't know what that means or what that looks like, but we'll see what that comes out and looks like. But hypothetically, they come out and say, hey, we're doing away with DEF altogether. What's that look like? It changes the landscape of equipment in a lot of ways, especially on the used side. Again, there's the things that are associated with doing that. If we can just start deleting things and put things back, then that opens up a whole different look and feel, because like we've talked about in here a lot of the stuff where we're seeing some big dollars come from the auction side is that that lower hour, 5,000 hour, 3,000 hour or less pre-def machines that are bringing some really big money, $150,000, $200,000 stuff we've talked about on here. And that's not an accident, right? That's what somebody's looking for. They're looking for that pre-def.
Right.
So what's that mean for a machine when it comes in? It's got 750 hours or 1,000 hours or 2,000 hours, something like that. And it's a 1 to 5 year old machine. What's that do to that marketplace, and how's that start to make things look? It'll be interesting to watch that flow, especially as you start looking at where we're at on some of this 2-year-old stuff. That's a fairly big marketplace right now of equipment out there. But if you can take all that stuff off, does that bring more buyers to the market? And I think it might. I think there could be some folks that are kind of perk their ears up a little bit, but it comes back to dollars and cents, just like everything else does. There could be some folks that there could be some guys out there buying that pre-def stuff that can afford a 2-year-old something, but they just want the pre-def. So what's that look like when you start putting that into place? So I think it opens up the spectrum a little bit into an area of maybe an intense a little bit of intensity when you start looking at maybe some of the stuff that we're seeing come off the dealership lots and go through the auction space. But I think it's more short-lived than anything. I think it not like it's going to be the new normal for the next 5 years, but maybe for the next 6 to 18 months, you see a real pickup in that marketplace.
Well, this will just be endlessly fascinating, Casey, because you're going to have farmers and dealers and manufacturers all pivoting and adjusting on the fly at the same time.
Yeah.
So we just got done talking about, as weird as it sounds in this time, maybe tightening supply of used. So one of the things, of course, doing what I do all these years is, cataloging the prices, but then also listening to the farmer when they buy something. Why did you buy that and not something else? So chatter-wise, one of the things you hear out there on the auction market is people definitely looking for the pre-def stuff, right or wrong. Certainly lots of emotion involved and valid reasons and stuff. But now, in theory, snap your fingers. You've taken that away. Now, what you're opening up is, yes, it's still hard to write that check for that 2 or 3 year old item for X, whatever, $400,000, $300,000, $400,000. But you're taking away one reason that a farmer would say, that's why I'm not buying that.
Right.
And yeah. I've got pushing 4 decades, and we talked about it a lot, the magic 10-year-old mark, because the price of new is so high that whenever it gets to be 10 years old, that's what people really want down the chain, is like a low hour, 8, 10-year-old, 12-year-old. And I remember people telling me, Pete, that won't hold once the tier 4 engines and the DEF stuff comes in. When that's 10 years old, they won't want it. And that was incorrect. I knew that was wrong, that it would still be the fact that 10 years old is such a price gap between the price of new, they'll still want it. And now you're saying that can be, you're taking away what they don't like. And we're already starting to hint at maybe this used market's a little starting to get tight. Now imagine if you interjected money into the system. Price in corn and beans went up. It's just going to be really, really interesting to see how this all plays out. Like I say, I have 36 plus years. I don't know. I've seen it. Well, there's nothing like it. And there's the beauty of the auction market again, right? Because it's like, okay, they did these. If they do all these changes, now here it is at auction. What are you going to pay for it? We've got it all documented what they paid for it last week, last month, 6 months ago, last year. Now it's all different. Wow, it'll be interesting to find out.
Yeah, yep, it will be, and it's this whole since this decade started, right? I mean, the COVID thing was unprecedented, never happened before. The backside of COVID, when you saw 2.5 to 3 years worth of inventory hit the marketplace all at one time when supply chains caught up, unprecedented, never happened before. And then where we're at right now with how used equipment settled in after that 3.5 years worth of quote unquote cleansing, I guess, by lack of a better term, of the used equipment space. Where we're at now, again, unprecedented space where you've not seen these kind of things move into it. And it's also been interesting to see how the manufacturers have reacted to that, right? Mm-hmm. And what they've done with this is one of the first times where I've watched manufacturers actually kind of listen to what the dealerships are telling them as far as, hey, we're not doing these things, and here's why. And the manufacturer being like, that makes sense. We're going to back you here on this for a little bit.
Yes.
But it's not been like that in the past.
No, agree, 100%. I think that's a huge factor that's making the whole farm equipment space, again, like it or not, it's just more efficient than it's ever been. Yeah. And we still aren't caught up to the automobile space, but we're gaining. And again, if you're on the farmer side of this equation, again, it doesn't matter if you don't like it. You just have to be aware of these new realities and how things are moving quicker. And maybe at some point, Casey, we'll have a patch of 5 years where we can just kind of go, nothing, no crises.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Seems like our whole world is like on fire all the time now.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it seems like that now more than ever, but I don't ever remember a time where by the time I had stuff figured out, a new thing happened that you had to throw into the rest.
That is one thing. That is one thing is we all get tired of everything going on in the world and all this stuff. It's I think we forget. We always see is what's in front of us, but there have been many tumultuous. I mean, obviously, and farmers know that better than anybody, having lived through the '80s and whatever the condition, we just do the best we can, and that's been fun on my side, trying to help over the years through the ups and downs, and just trying to listen to farmers and dealers, and but whatever the future holds, farmers and dealers will take it on and make it the best they can to do what we got to do.
Yeah, for sure. All right, Greg, good place to stop. If folks want to reach out you got a couple things coming up. You're going to be at the National Farm Machinery Show here, next week, right?
Yeah, I'll be there one day on Thursday for sure, the 12th, maybe the 13th. I'm not sure yet. So I'll be poking around the show, hopefully run into folks. And it's kind of like a family reunion down there. So top producer, Monday the 9th in Nashville, Farm Journal's great event. That'll be super fun. This Friday, the 6th, I'll be in Western Kentucky at the, I believe it's called the 2026 Winter Egg Conference in Water Valley, Kentucky. I'm looking forward. I love Kentucky. Can't wait to get back down there.
Right on.
Oh, and actually, the day before that, Thursday, I'll be in Bushnell, Florida, covering, I think, day 8 or 9 of Lion Auction's 12-day heavy equipment auction. So I'm curious to get a feel for that late model heavy stuff, how that's been selling.
Yeah. That time of the year down in Florida, there's a big run there, about 30 days where they do.
It's unbelievable.
Time. Yeah, it's pretty impressive what they
That's
do.
a 12-day auction check it out, folks. Lion, Lyon, lionauction.com. 12-day auction. So I'm just can't wait to get down there. And even if it's 40 degrees, hey, that's warmer than it is in Minnesota here. So what the heck?
You'll have your half shirt on by then.
Machinery Pete in a muscle shirt and cargo shorts. How about that?
There you go. That'll work out well. Well, Greg, appreciate you being on. We'll catch you again next week, man.
Sounds great, Casey. Have a good one.
All right, stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these messages.
Well, there they are, mocking you.
See you next year, loser.
That weedy area that's got you thinking, man, I hate that spot. Wish I'd sprayed better. Get the last laugh with a sprayer upgrade from John Deere. Precision upgrades that can increase your sprayer's performance, like Exact Apply, advanced nozzles to give you more control at more speeds. It's just one of the many precision upgrades you'll find at johndeere.com. Now, let's see who's laughing.
All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. I got Sean Hackett from Hackett Financial on to talk about what's happening in the world of commodities. Sean, how you doing this morning?
I'm good. A little warmer today. Feeling better about things. My outlook on life is better.
That's good.
So, and everyone, most of the country is going to see a little more of a warm up next week, as you typically get after an historic cold event. But I don't believe winter's over. I think we're going to have another big round of cold back half of the month into March. So I wouldn't put away my winter clothing just yet.
Well, we need some winter where I live at because we haven't had one yet. So,
well, as you know, it's center east and center west was always going to be warm. That was the forecast was a very defined line of west is warm, east is cold. The majority of the people live east, so that's why the heating degree days have been record setting. Because if you have record cold to the west, the heating degree days are just nowhere near the same. So if you want a cold winter as defined by heating degree days and the demand for energy, it's got to be the center east, which is what we've had. Okay. So,
all right, so let's talk a little bit about that. As you watch the storm roll through, how you seen that, and then what are you seeing happen with natural gas because of it?
Well, natural gas has been just crazy volatile. We had the big rise in December, in the first part of December when it was so cold, crashed. We had the brief warm up, in December, in late December, early January. Then the natural gas price doubled in 3 trading days. When winter came back, and we had this incredible cold that we're still kind of finishing up now. It crashed again because we're looking at a brief warm up coming up. And I imagine it's going to have another big surge. I'm not sure why the natural gas market is unable to be more persistently higher. It's just been this crazy volatile. I mean, we're drawing down the supplies. It really shouldn't be. We've had a top 5 cold December. We've had a top 5 cold January, and we're already having really, really cold weather the first 10 days of February, even though there's going to be a little bit of warm up for 1 week. We're going to have a top 5 February. I mean, I just think the natural gas market is grossly mispricing itself again. And I would think the next cold wave that goes into late February into March, I think maybe that's what finally keeps the natural gas price at a higher level when the market addresses how low these storage supplies are going to get. But it's been a wild market, Casey. It's been all over the place. The forecast has been correct. The natural gas price has been pretty wild.
Yeah, it's been all over the place for sure. And this weather that we're seeing is, a lot of friends of mine I've talked to, especially on the East Coast, who saw some epic snows on the East Coast. South, I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina right now, and they were in the middle of 2 different storms. East and west of them got anywhere between 12 to 20 inches, depending on where you're at, and they got about 3 or 4 inches of snow where they're at. But when you're looking at areas like this that don't see snow like that, and it's a once.
I don't think we're done. It looks to me like we're going to get another, at least one more major, potentially 2 major systems over the next 30 days that could go dive deep into the deep south, and make that turn up, and then get the northeast, depending on exactly where the low pressure system is. For sure, there's one more. And I think there could be a second one. And so I don't think that the unusually snowy pattern for where they don't normally get snow, and just where they do get snow, it's been well above normal. I don't think that's over yet. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. So if you're have travel plans in the eastern half of the country, let's say after next week, I just be mindful of the weather, because I think you're going to have another set of delays and cancellations and airport closures and all the things that make travel an unmitigated disaster during those periods of time. So
I got a question. I was thinking about this today. I think this is the second or third winter in a row where we've had something like this happen in the deep south. And you've talked a lot about Pacific oscillation and Atlantic oscillation and those kind of things, and where the water temperature is at, and those. Talk a little bit about what you think is driving some of this weather pattern that we're seeing, especially this time of the year, because it typically comes in this time of the year. So I guess your thoughts on that.
We have been forecasting for a while in our presentations that we were expecting to see much colder deep south temperatures. One of the reasons for it was that we expected that the Atlantic Ocean, especially the North Atlantic, was going to see a cooling sea surface temperature regime below normal. There's gravity reasons for it, meaning how the planets are aligned and upwelling versus downwelling. And there's also the Beaufort gyre, which we've mentioned on your show quite a few times, about clockwise versus counterclockwise and all that cold, fresh water, dumping into the north. Woods Hole Institute has in fact verified that has now reversed, and we are seeing very, 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 very cold sea surface temperatures in the North Pacific, and it's starting to work its way further south. What I'm getting at is we're starting to develop what's called a negative AMO, Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. And if you run correlation studies, when you have a negative AMO, like we had from 1965 to 1985, that 20-year period, we had a very strong negative AMO. It tends to create deep south troughing. and that's how you get your storms to come further south and then make the turn. So that's a key reason why we're getting these deeper pushes. I mean, we haven't seen these kinds of cold and snowy weather. I mean, it's been a very, very long time that we've seen anything like this. You'd have to go back to the 70s really to see anything quite like that in the deep south. And it's going to be a more regular feature. Not every year. I mean, you still have to have other factors in your favor like we had this year. But if this negative AMO is shifting, these are 30-year cycles, meaning you can tend to have a warm Atlantic for 30 years and a cold Atlantic for 30 years. So my view is we're just entering a 30-year period of colder Atlantic Ocean sea surface temperatures, and that means that this center east and the deep south, they do need to buy some snow plows.
Yeah, they do.
And I actually mean that crazy seriously. Like they're going to need to buy some snow plows, because if this is going to, let's say at every 10 years, 6 years are going to be like this. They need some snow plows. They need to buy a little salt, rock salt. They just, I don't think you're going to continue to shut everybody down and for weeks, and these patterns are going to get deeper and longer. You know, we're in the early stages. This is by no means as bad as it's going to get for the deep south. This is just the first few innings of this 9-inning game that I think has just started. But it does, a changing of the Atlantic Ocean, especially the North Atlantic, is a huge shift. And you have to think of it this way. When the Atlantic is warm, especially the North Atlantic, it produces high rising air and a high pressure system, right, which tends to find itself over the east, which tends to not allow deep dives of low pressure. Mm-hmm. If it's cold, you have a low pressure system, you get sinking air, which is a low pressure system, which tends to hide out over the east, which means you get this deep troughing. Now, if you have like the quasi-biennial oscillation is going from east to west, like it is this year, disrupting the polar vortex, and you have other factors that, you know, a warm north Pacific like we have this year, and you don't have, like, you're in more of a neutral condition. Like, there's a lot of factors that came to create this weather event, but the point I'm trying to make is that the cold Atlantic is what's going to make these events much more severe for the deep south, and that's really what's changed. And it's a permanent change for a considerable period of time. What it's I don't ever want to say it's just one variable, but the big change to why we're getting more consistent pushes of cold in the deep south is the cold North Atlantic, this shifting of the negative AMO, which is a 30-year cycle. And now that we have confirmation that the Beaufort Gyre has reversed, and that record amount of cold fresh water is going to continue to dump in for the foreseeable future, it's just big weather pattern change. It's just a big weather pattern change. And it just means, generally speaking, center east is going to get more consistently cold than it has since that mid 60s to mid 80s time frame. And the west is going to be on the warmer side. Yeah. That's what happens. It's going to be on the warmer side. Doesn't mean you won't have a cold winter every once in a while. Doesn't mean you're not going to have snow in the ski resorts. It just means we typically have had cold west, warm east. That's what we've had for winters for a long time, generally speaking. And now it's going to be like this year: warm out west, cold in the east. So maybe you need to go west to stay warm.
Yeah, I tell you, man.
Maybe Nebraska's the place to go.
Well, I can tell you that we've had. I think the week before Thanksgiving, it's been in the 50s most of the time. I think Christmas Day was like 62 degrees. Yeah. You had a couple cold snaps come through this last week. You know, we had.
Yeah, you're because you're on the edge. Every once in a while, you're going to get a little feel of it, but you're too far.
If you go way west of me, there's like you get into like Wyoming and Montana and western Colorado and all. There's no mountain snow right now.
No.
It's getting to be, and for where we're at, like from an irrigation perspective and how much water we rely on upon snowmelt, in that part of the world for irrigation and farming, it's kind of getting a little scary to think about the complete lack of water that's out there.
Well, I guess what you're saying is, and what I'm saying is that if we're going to have a generally speaking shift in the winter pattern to less cold out west, just because it's less cold doesn't mean you don't get snow. But if the low pressure systems are going to shift, then you might have a much more persistently lower snowmelt runoff. That could create an issue for irrigation needs out west. Certainly something that one needs to monitor very closely here.
Yep. Real quick, while we're talking on this subject, I would love to get your feedback on where you see the U.S. drought monitor at right now. I'm going to share my screen so people can see what this looks like. Give me 1 second here, and we'll get this up. But as you look at the drought monitor and where things are at is the places that are, if you look at where some of the extreme droughts start to creep into in some areas, you're seeing some key growing areas in the Corn Belt. Now, obviously, it's still early, right? A lot of things could change between now and planting season starts. But as you look at this drought map, Sean, like what's your reaction to this right now?
I mean, you don't usually see a Palmer drought severity index like that this time of the year. That's a worrisome sign. We talked in our presentations this winter. We've been talking about this unusually dry. If you research, Casey, 1934, 1936, 1955, 1988, 2012, these big major droughts, they all started early. Like the drought just didn't show up on May 30th. No, the drought had been developing for 6 months prior. Like you were seeing dry weather developing well before. And by the time you got to May, it was in full bloom. And then if you get hot, dry June and July, it's over. You know what I mean? And so that's why I thought I've been mentioning this, because it's very interesting. We haven't really seen a Palmer drought severity index. The key here is we've seen it out west before. What we haven't seen it is this center east. This is very unusual for the center east to be this dry. The west has been dry before. Like you've seen this kind of dryness this time of the year before, but the center and the east to be this dry. I went back. I went back 30 years. I could have gone back more. I went back 30 years and tried to find when was the last time we had this kind of dry soil this time of the year in the center east of the country. You'd have to go back to 2012, Casey, the last time we had anything like this at this time of the year. That doesn't mean we're going to have a major drought this summer. It just means that's a very, very worrisome sign that it's what it's saying is this is unusual. You always are looking for unusual things that are not normal, right? Yep. And getting back to the cold Atlantic, the other manifestation of a cold Atlantic for the east is that the trend has been in the last 20 years, we have all kinds of drought out west. The east is fine. I mean, that's generally speaking been the trend. The east is fine. The west has tons of drought. That's been our pattern, right? I mean, we've had Nebraska, all kinds of drought. Out west, all kinds of drought. The Dakotas, all kinds of drought. But the east, the I-states, it's generally speaking, have had plenty of moisture, and we've had a warm Atlantic. But if you cool the Atlantic, you flip it now, and what happens is, generally speaking, you're going to get a drier center east pattern than before, and so given that we're just starting to see this sea surface temperature change in the Atlantic, and now all of a sudden that we're starting to see some unusual dryness in the east that we haven't really seen in a long time. I think there's something to that. Like we're starting to see the atmosphere shift and change, and this is, like I said, this shifting of the Atlantic Ocean, when it happens, is a big weather pattern shift, not just here, but everywhere in the world. Like it's a major change of the weather patterns that we've been accustomed to. And so that has always been part of the weather volatility cycle that we've talked about. When we always talk about the sun, but we always talk about the sea surface temperature shifts, and the Atlantic Ocean is a big one in terms of what it means for moisture, what it means for temperature. So I think for this coming season, Casey, the key as to whether what you just showed is going to become a problem or not is whether El Nino arrives before the growing season or not. At the moment, all the weather models are saying El Nino is going to arrive by late spring. If that's true, then we'll get some rains, and we're going to ease. We'll ease that back, and it won't be a major issue. I went back to 1950, and I looked at. So we had an El Nino a few years back, and it was a strong El Nino. Mm-hmm. Okay, strong El Nino. Like you have weak, you have moderate, and then you have strong. You don't get a whole lot of strong ones. That was the first strong one we've had since 2015. Okay, I went back and looked at every time we had a very, very, very strong El Nino, and I said, well, when after that, when was the next time that we had an El Nino after a strong one? And it was 4 years. You did not get another El Nino until 4 years later. Like when you get that kind of a strong one, it takes time to redevelop the energy to develop another El Nino. Well, 2023 was your big El Nino. Okay. Well, if I put 4 years ahead, that means 2027 is your El Nino year, which should start late this year. Like that's what's always happened. So, and then there's also a trend that the weather models are pretty good at predicting El Nino trajectory into March, but they have terrible accuracy on the other side of spring. Meaning there's this, they call it the spring block. You can actually do a search that these weather models just have no ability to predict El Nino trajectory on the other side of spring. Like there's this window of spring that they consistently either overestimate or underestimate what El Nino or La Nina are going to do in those sea surface temperatures in the Central Pacific. So I am very, very skeptical of all these models telling everyone that we're going to have this El Nino, in May, June, when their track record has been so bad. And I have a 75-year track record that says, we've never seen an El Nino come back after a strong one. After we've never seen it come in before 4 years, which is 2027. So I'm very skeptical. Obviously, doesn't mean it can't happen. There can always be an outlier. Maybe this is a one-off shot, but we're going with the idea that El Nino is going to arrive later in the year. We're not going to have El Nino for the summer. And that 27 is going to be your El Nino year. And if that is what happens, then I think that Palmer drought severity index could be looking much, much, much worse when we get into May and June. And then we just have to see if we can bring in the heat to really hurt the crop. So to me, that's the issue here. And when's El Nino going to arrive or not? And we're really not going to know that for sure. I think mid-late April, we're going to have a pretty good idea of the trajectory, and then we'll find out if the historical analogs of the 4-year rule plays out yet again, or the models, happen to get it right this time. I give them being right very low probability, but it's possible. So to me, that is the number one thing to watch. And there's really no way to determine anything more than that until we get to like mid-April, because the models can't really predict it. I can only tell you what the history says. The history says we shouldn't expect El Nino to arrive until, let's say, the fall, but we have to have confirmation of that. So.
Okay. All right. Good stuff, man. All right. Let's take a look at what's going on in the cattle market right now. You look at the cattle, there's no real sign of herd replenishment by any means. you're seeing supplies kind of where they're at. They've kind of been that way again, down over year from the last report we saw on Friday. I guess, Sean, as you're looking at this, what incentives are you looking at right now as a cow producer to say, hey, I'm going to start rebuilding my herd?
Well, I mean, certainly the profit potential is there. I mean, they're making money. Mm-hmm. The problem that I think has happened is the cattle producer got so destroyed during COVID and so destroyed in those fires that we had at the packing houses, and have gotten so hurt over the years from this concentration of packing houses to where, what is it, 3 or 4 run the whole thing, and majority of the cattle ranch owners, producers are getting up there in age, and I just don't think. I just think they're just happy running profitable operations like they are. It's always been an extremely tough business. So many factors beyond your control. It's a labor of love, of course, and yet the whole world is seemingly against them because they produce too much methane and CO2, and they gotta all the environmental regulations. You gotta do all these things. I just think that they're just so tired of it all, and given their age, I just think they're just, hey, I'm gonna just another 5 or 10 years. I'm just gonna just keep running my operations, keeping my cow herd the way that it is, and putting as much money equity into it as I can, and I'll sell it to somebody who's younger or a corporation, and they can go and rebuild the herd on their dime and their effort. Keep me out of it. That's my sense of it, because we're not seeing the response that we've always seen. We're not seeing it. I mean, this report says we are not seeing it. And that means that the cattle market prices, the cattle prices, are going to be driven by the demand side of the equation. Is demand surging? Is it falling back? The demand's going to be the modulating factor. Are the packers profitable? Are they losing money? Are we bringing beef in from other sources? Are we importing beef to offset it, which we're at least doing on the low end with Brazil? Are we bringing some animals in from Mexico, which we're still not doing yet, but we need to do that. That's certainly something we need to do. I just think we need to find a way to bring more beef into the country. I know we've always been an exporter mindset, but the reality is, if we're not going to rebuild the herd, and even if we started rebuilding the herd, Casey, it's 2.5 year process. So even if it started today, we're not going to see a response for at least, a year and a half to 2 years. So, and that's if it was cranking today, which it's not. So we're going to have to find a way to augment our unwillingness to grow the herd by bringing beef in from other, Australia, or bringing beef in from other places that have excess beef. I don't see another way around it other than continuing to pay very high beef prices for the foreseeable future. Now, they're going to fluctuate. Demand is backing off, but without a supply response, I mean, there's a certain amount of demand for beef that is still going to be there even at these prices, Casey. You know what I'm saying?
Yep. Yeah, that's you said, and this kind of always been there, but this dairy on beef situation that we see, where there's a readily available supply of animals coming out of that sector into operations that can go right from 400-pound steer into the feedlot into a packing plant. That there's enough out there right now to where, like you're talking about, it just feels like, I'm making money. Things are looking good for me. I'm kind of there's younger operations coming in, but it's like you said, it's just like farming. There's the amount of ranchers out there that are in late 50s, early 60s, late 60s time frame, and they're just. I think you're right. I mean, you look at what's going on. There's not a lot of incentive out there for someone to tell into the career to say, I'm going to go risk it all one more time, see what happens.
And even look at the hog industry. I mean, we've had profitable operations now for a year at least, maybe longer. No response. Normally, they would be running over themselves I mean, they could rebuild the herd start in 6 months, right? 6 to 9 months. Nothing. The last pig report we got, nothing.
Yeah.
The only livestock sector that's growing the herd is the dairy, and the reason they're growing the herd because they're producing the beef cows that they're then selling into the beef into the lower end market. They're creating these crosses, as you just said. That's why the herd's growing. They're not growing because the milk price is great. They're growing because they're getting so much money for these heads of cattle that they can sell into the beef cattle market. That they're growing the herd for that reason, not because they want to produce more milk. By doing that, they're producing more milk, which is why we've been having trouble. So dairy industry is very, very interesting. They're because they're getting so much for the cows, they don't need a high milk price to make the operation work right now. So it's very interesting what's going on in the dairy industry. But my overall assessment is the livestock industry is told the world, go screw yourself. You don't want us? Fine. Then we're not going to bust our ass anymore. We got what we got. We have the barns that we have. We have the heads of cattle that we have. We have the genetics that we have. We're just going to maintain what we have, and we're just going to run profitable operations, and not sweat anymore because you guys obviously hate us, and are out to get us. And so why should we bust our ass anymore to do anything? I really feel in all the customers I have and the customers and the people that I meet on the road when I'm traveling and I talk to them, that is the mentality of the livestock producer. And I don't think it's going to change, Casey, until this generation of livestock owners sells out to whoever is going to buy them out. And then maybe things could change if it becomes more of a corporate owned type thing. But the 65-year-old cattle rancher, hog producer, he's saying, nope, I'm not going on this roller coaster again. I'm not going to do it. And I don't blame them.
Yeah,
I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
I don't either. So as you, Sean, I got to ask you this question. As you're looking at what's going on in the United States agricultural marketplace right now, and you look how Brazil's playing into that, and you start looking how China plays into that, and less of our exports that basically we built the entire U.S. market around was to export stuff to other countries, primarily China. And as you're watching these things move through, as you look at this reshaping of U.S. agriculture, what direction do you see it going in? Do you see less acres of soybeans and more acres of corn? Because our corn demand, export corn demand, is the best it's ever been. But as you're watching this transpire and take place, we just talked about the cattle herd and what we see there, and the incentive to regrow the herd's really not there. And if you look at soybean acres, like there's really no incentive to grow any more soybeans than we can domestically crush right now and feed. And same way, corn's the only one out there that really has a strong export marketplace. So that's a big shift in the overall thinking of agriculture right now. So I guess, what are your thoughts on the future of how the U.S. export plays out, and what are we going to do as a country now from an agricultural perspective to drive price?
Well, the producers have made their decision. They're going to continue to plant a lot more corn acres, because if you look at the corn situation, we still have a competitive advantage against everybody. No one else in the world grows a bunch of corn. Our exports for corn are record setting. We don't need China for corn. Demand for corn to feed animals for the GLP-1 craze is, corn has a great long-term story. And we have the ability to control our own destiny to some extent in corn. In South America, in Brazil has decided to become a corn-based ethanol country, and they're just producing every gallon of ethanol they can from corn. And so their corn exports are just not going to grow much, and they're not growing production there like they are in soybeans. But soybeans, I mean, you know, we just have no ability to compete with them. We just don't. We uh, China does not need to buy any soybeans from us, and they never will have to buy soybeans from us. So we've permanently lost that demand, which means we don't need 88. You know, we don't need all these acres anymore, because if all those bushels of soybeans that we used to sell to the Chinese, we get to keep, well, then we have a hell of a lot more supply to crush than we did before, which means we need a hell of a lot less acres to plant in order to have the crush produce enough to crush, right? I mean, like you just said. So this is a permanent shift. This 100 million acre that we planted last year, I'm not saying we're going to plant 100 million acres every year. I don't think we'll do that this year, but I think we're going to be planting 97 to 100 million acres of corn for the foreseeable future. Unless we have, $1 corn, then we won't, you know what I'm saying? But it's a permanent shift. It doesn't mean we don't need to plant soybeans. It just means it's a permanent shift of acreage. That's not going to change. And so unless Brazil stops growing production of soybeans, or either by for geopolitical reasons or because of weather, they're going to be the soybean king, and we're going to be the corn king. Russia is the wheat king, right? I mean, if you really want to come down to it, Russia, Ukraine are the wheat. Well, Russia is the wheat king. We're the corn king, and Brazil is the soybean king, and that's it. Those are the three kings and the three crops. Nobody else really matters on the margin. They really don't. I mean, if Russia has a large wheat crop, it just really doesn't matter what everybody else does. If Brazil has a big soybean crop, it doesn't matter what anybody else does. I'm not saying it doesn't matter, but on the margin, it doesn't really matter.
It's going to carry the marketplace with whatever happens, right? I mean, it's the same thing with anything else. Like, there's certain things, like when I was at the dealership, certain things where certain stores sold certain products, and if they didn't hit the number they needed to hit, it didn't matter what everybody else did. We weren't going to hit it, right? And it's the same concept, right? I mean, if Russia has a horrible wheat crop and everybody else has a great one, it doesn't. And we have a high price of wheat, right? Yeah. If it's vice versa, we have a low price. It's just
I mean, if Brazil's going to have a terrible coffee crop because they dominate coffee, we're going to have a problem. If they have a big coffee crop, it doesn't really matter what everybody else does. So I think that's what we're heading into, a tripolar focused ag industry where we have the U.S. is king on corn, soybeans are king in Brazil, and wheat is king of Russia's king for wheat, and that's what's going to those are the areas that the weather matters the most, where geopolitics matters the most, where ag policy, subsidies, environmental policy that matters the most, and that's kind of where we're heading with all this. Because of the shift. Now, what could change that? I mean, the two things that I think could change that is if you had a dramatic geopolitical deterioration in one of these countries, like Russia or in Brazil. They have some kind of a revolution and everything falls apart and the investment fall. I mean, it would be something like that, or you'd have to have some significant change in long-term weather patterns to alter the trajectory of that region being able to grow the manner with which they're growing. I think there's a possibility in Brazil. We may have that with the Amazon deforestation and the deterioration of rainfall that we've seen there, that if it were to persist, we'll find out in 5 years whether that's actually going to be the case or not. We're still able to grow good crops, even though 50% reduction in moisture because they had so much of it before. But if we go any further down, I think I believe there would be a severe impact, but it hasn't happened yet. That would be, to me, the most likely area to watch that could change the balance of power if we would see another notch down in rainfall, and they can't keep adding those acres, or they have to pull back acres, or their yields start to fall. Obviously, Russia. Obviously, there's huge geopolitical risks in Russia.
Right.
that are there, are going to continue to be there. Can't exactly predict. For example, if Putin were to die, or there'd be a coup. He's overthrown because the hardliners don't like him anymore, and it throws the country into chaos. Their wheat production would be negatively impacted based upon that. Like those are the things. But pretty much as it stands today, that's what we're looking at, and that's why you have to look at these three regions very, very carefully for subtle changes that would alter the balance of power, at least for the grain markets. That's what we're looking at. When it comes to rice, you have the Western Hemisphere rice, which is Brazil and the U.S., and then you have the Asian rice, which is India and Southeast Asia, and the Western Hemisphere rice. The price of rice where it's at, I don't know how we're going to produce the amount of Western rice that is needed in either Brazil or the U.S. at these prices, meaning that the acres are going to get so low, and the cost of producing a rice crop is so high that something has to give. Unless we decide we want to import a bunch of Asian rice into the country, which we would have to do unless we change something. But the economics are so bad in the rice industry for Western Hemisphere. I keep feeling like the price needs to respond there, or we're going to start importing rice from Asia, because there's not going to be another way to handle it. Because Arkansas, which dominates rice production in the U.S., they aren't going to survive at this price level. It's not going to survive. It's just a very, very strange scenario how you could do this, but that's what's happening. So,
Okay. All right, Sean, good place to stop. If folks want to reach out to you, get more information about what's going on over at Hackett Financial, what's the best way to do that?
Our website is Hackett, Hackett, advisors.com. We have a Twitter page at Faradix11. I guess it's an X page. I should say X page.
X page, yeah.
X marks the spot. And from time to time we put some stuff out there, some of your interviews, some other interviews, and some tidbits of some of our cycle statistics and correlations, so that people that watch your show might glean some value and some insight to where weather and where prices might be going here as we move into the next year and beyond. So,
right on. Well, Sean, I appreciate you being on the podcast. We'll catch you again next time.
Look forward to it, Casey. Thanks.
All right. Stay tuned for more Moving Iron podcasts after these messages.
Looking for more accuracy, more productivity from your current planter? Let's get exact with precision upgrades from John Deere. Start with Exact Emerge and get accurate singulation and spacing at 10 miles per hour. Or choose Exact Shot to promote early root growth and cut fertilizer costs. And with Furrow Vision, save time by verifying seed depth right from your cab. Visit johndeere.com/planner upgrades and see why nothing runs like a deer.
All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. Got Aaron Findle back on to talk about what's happening in the marketplace. Aaron, how you doing today, bud?
Terrific, sir. Terrific.
Awesome. How things out in your neck of the woods? I'm in Raleigh, North Carolina, where I guess it snows more the closer to the ocean that you get than it does to the center of the country. So,
well, it does not snow in the center of the country. It's just 55 every single day. It's like a beautiful, windy Groundhog Day.
That's right.
That's what winter's been.
Yeah.
Every day is 50 by 50.
Yeah.
And it's like, hey, this is kind of nice and everything, but the Sahara has gotten more moisture than we have.
Yeah.
As has Death Valley, as has every desert other than our little nook of the high plains. So that you have a day of wind. Hey, here's the thing. I haven't scooped any snow all winter. I've scooped sand twice.
I can't imagine. There's been some windy days out there.
Man, dude, this is like where my place is at. It's just flat as an absolute board for I don't even know, 5, 6, 7, 8 miles. It's just absolute tabletop flat by the airports. That tells you what kind of terrain. And we always get, all the fences, welded wire cattle panels. You always get that little, them couple wires are buried just because of wind and dirt and the lots and whatever. That happens, but just kind of back and forth and whatever. The lots are literally sand drifts.
Yeah.
If the sheep were smart enough, which, right, that's a whole other discussion. But if they were smart enough, there is literally, because of how the wind blew, on both sides of the lot, there is this much fence above a drift of sand on each side. And they climb up that hill and look over the top and bah all day, waiting, at chore time. Right. And I'm like, thank God you haven't taken 2 more steps. So it's been a little windy, is what I'm getting at.
A little windy, a little dry. And we live in where if it's silty sand, and it doesn't take much to kick up a dust storm in our next.
It'd be nice if there was some silt to it. Might hold it down a little better. This is like a beach.
Yeah, that's true. Good point.
This is beach sand.
Good point.
What are you doing? Well, first we're going to strip till, then we're going to build some sand castles, then we're going to plant.
Yeah, it is definitely a dry place for sure. So hopefully that turns around here. We still have April, which is we haven't had the first winter yet, so April's typically second.
March.
We'll see what happens in the March-April time frame. See if we can't get something there. All right, we had a EPA came out yesterday with a new some new guidelines around DEF and how that some and how that right to repair and those kind of things and what that looks like. And I think it's worth a discussion. Talk a little bit about that. So, and of course I'm paraphrasing here. So if you want to get more information about that, go check out AgWeb. There's a story there kind of outlining what everything was said there. But basically, long story short was, after all these years, there was a loophole inside the language, I guess, that stated that there was a if the machine was down because of DEF issues, then you could take the DEF off and operate the machine, which you can. There's a lot of ways that you say there's a DEF issue. It's the simplest one being that you're out of DEF, and that's impairing my machine to run. So that could be as simple as that. The thing that's about some of this, I think, a little bit is it's a little. I mean, if you own a machine with DEF on it, and the DEF part of that's anything off road, right? So anything off road, construction equipment, ag equipment, whatever it might be, everything off road is that can be taken off there. But the thing about the DEF situation, where it's not as simple as just unhooking a wire or something like that. There's quite a bit that goes into it. Everything from updating software to the parts that you have to replace on the machine to go through there. You've seen it up close and personal. I've seen it up close and personal. It's somewhere between, depending on what the machine is, between $40,000 and $60,000 to take a machine, to delete a machine.
Right.
All the programming and the parts that are associated with it. It's not just as simple as, hey, I'm going to go in and hit something on the monitor and I'm going to be, I'm good to go. Like it's a pretty in-depth process to make it happen. So that's number one. I think that's what the EPA came out with and did. I think it's great. If you want to do that with your machine, awesome, go for it. And I think that's all, knock yourselves out. I think it's a great idea, but to understand what you're walking into when you start looking at this situation, because it's not just as simple as I'm just going to unhook a couple wires and come back in. Now, the backside of this, there's some more stuff coming down the line where there's supposed to be another similar kind of press conference comes out that, and then of course they don't really tell you what it's talking about, but they've hinted towards they're going to do away with DEF altogether. What's that mean? So that could change things, but I think again, it's not like these manufacturers don't have facilities that are shipping machines to Eastern Europe and Brazil and Argentina and places like that, where Tier 3 engines are still, pre-DEF engines are still being used and operated. So it's like the big step if they decide, hey, we're going to do away with the DEF. Not a big step to bring a machine in and start doing that. I think it's going to be interesting to watch what any manufacturer does when you're looking at this, because ultimately, at the end of the day, the next administration that comes in, if they're not favorable towards this topic, then the likelihood of them changing it back, or whatever it might be, some kind of a issue that pops up there, could bring those machines back into a scenario where we got to put the stuff back on now. And the way politics are rolling right now, and everybody wants to, instead of catering to the middle of their party, they want to cater to the extreme edges, So I could see some bill coming out that's like, well, now if you were a farmer and you took the stuff off and you want to keep it off, that's fine, but you have to pay some kind of a tax or whatever it is.
Right.
Like, there's so many scenarios here where I think if you own the machine and you want to take it off, awesome, go for it. Coming out of the factory, I think they'd have to have a left-leaning party of some kind come in and say, hey, we're not going to touch the DEF thing, for the manufacturer to say, okay, well, I guess we'll keep DEF off of equipment. Right now, it's the home team says it's cool, but when the new home team gets back into, a different home team gets back into the office, are they going to say it's cool? And I think that's the big question you have to ask. So as I'm looking at stuff come out of the factory over the next 2 or 3 years, I don't see where the manufacturers have much incentive to say, hey, yeah, we're going to take the stuff off and we're going to have a DEF-free option because of what it looks like now. Maybe there's some kind of language in there that says it's you can't, you have to rewrite the stuff, and there's going to be a grandfathered thing, just like there was in the past. But man, I tell you, it's a little bit of a sketchy area to be in right now.
Oh, for sure. As far as I would be flabbergasted if a manufacturer did anything about it. We're 2 years from another election.
Right.
Okay. Say that right now, today, okay.
Well, and moreover, on that same point, we're about 18 months away from midterm elections, which really retrofit the House and the Senate to where,
right.
And then there's a veto thing at that point. But again, it's the landscape that we live in.
But that's where we're at. So by the time they, say if it would even come out today, DEF's gone forever. You're still however many months until that's actually law. You have to wait till it's law before you start leaving stuff off at the factory. And then, 28 on January 20th of 2029, it all has to be Tier 4 again. F Tier 4, final Tier 4, like we are anyway. And then everybody's like, oh, well, that was a fun year. That's where it's at. All good and fine, but with the way American politics is right now, there is no way. Whatever, it honestly feels like whatever he decides, the next person will automatically backwards 180 it just because.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a
and like Casey said, you don't just unhook that hose off the DEF doser and plug it back into the DEF tank and ignore it all day. There is no bypass. You disassemble and reassemble. As a dealer, we don't get in on the deletion process, so I can't tell you what that costs. But I know, to go back to law, Casey hit the nail on the head. I was going to say 35 to 50. My numbers are always like 2 years old, so 40 to 60 is probably exactly right. And say it's half of that to delete it, okay? Say it even 10 and 60, 70. Was that worth it?
Yeah. Because your biggest savings.
That's a payment. Right. That's a high dollar payment, actually. That's a 9RX payment.
Yeah. I do get where they're coming from on that perspective of, hey, you know what? It's one less thing you have to worry about on the machine that can break. I can take the def system off. That's just one less
Right.
sensor and all the other stuff that goes into that. I mean, I get all
If
that.
it was simple, it would be terrific.
Yeah, but
you'd have everybody and their dog walking around going, "Oh, oops, that filter's got a hole in it."
Yeah. But you hear a horror story.
What happened to your def tank? I don't know. It somehow got a 3/8 round hole in the bottom.
You get the horror
his
stories.
filings?
Yeah, you get the horror stories all the time of those machines that are out in the field that are down because they can't figure out what the issue is and something to do with the def problem. You hear that stuff all the time. But you hear the same, and there's horror stories about, hey, there's an electrical issue that we can't figure out, or hey, there's a hydraulic issue that we can't figure out, or hey, there's a million different issues out there that pop up, that keep working their way through it. And if you can take the def off of something, that's one less thing to worry about. I get it. It makes total sense to me. I think the backside of that is if you have a tractor that you're going to run for a long time, you're going to, you got 5 years worth of before your trade cycle's up or whatever it is that you're doing, I think it's well worth your time to do it. But if you're doing something where you're rolling it every year or every 2 years or something like that, you probably need, I get it. Now, if something breaks, hey man, take it off. Is it cheaper to fix the issue that's wrong with it or take it down? And we start looking at all the stuff that come into play there. So I think a lot of different angles to look at it. But I think from my seat on the bus, when I'm looking at this, I look at the manufacturers and they're gonna point back and say, well, we definitely agree with everything you're saying, right? And we have it'd be interesting to see how to do that, because if you look at how, everything is something ready, right? It's auto track ready, it's
right,
it's ready, it's those kind of things. Maybe it's def ready, right? So you just they figure out some way to bypass the stuff to where it's a simple bolt on and update software and you're back in the game type of thing. It's something that they'll do something where it's easier, but unfortunately, I don't see a symptom now on the horizon that is where you really take down the price of a piece of equipment by an astronomical amount of money.
I like that idea. I love that idea. So you're 28, because you take a year for ramp up or whatever. Excuse me, ramp down.
Right.
You're 28 8R. Here she comes. Oh, what's that? I saw a little puff of smoke when I turned the key on.
Yeah.
And then you have a BXE 10197, which is your FT4 update kit that when the law changes in 30, you have to come back and get this kit. And we have to, as a dealer, we have to register it with the government, the EPA, so that we know you're covered. Like all those checks and balances. And then, yep, you went home and put it on, didn't you? Yep. And there we go.
Yeah. Yeah. That would be.
That angle is beautiful.
Yeah.
And maybe only in like states where they're worried about that, like where they really check that, like them poor guys in California, they would probably drive out to the farm and check. Yeah. California Air Board would be all over that business. We actually have installers that come and do it for you, so we handle it. But that angle's very cool, but it's not going to happen. I just do not see any way.
Something like a cash for clunkers type deal, where you get the $500 for your car or whatever, but they ruin it to where you can't use the engine ever again.
Worst program ever, by the way.
Was not a good one.
No. A lot of poor square bodies died in that.
Yeah. But I don't know. I look at this scenario and I have this. I see both sides of it, and I think it's great that what they're doing. I think it gives the opportunity to open the doors to some great abilities on the farm and those kind of things. But And at the end of the day, it's I think it affects the used existing equipment on the marketplace right now a lot more than it affects what's coming out of the factory. And I think as you watch these, another scenario is every time there's a new.
You're right, because here's what's going to happen. That law passes. There is 20, 25 might be a lot. 20%, 15, 20% of guys that are all over that. And within 2 months have everything stripped down.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Now the law's back. Now what?
Well,
that's the tricky part
that's
is
the tricky part. But I think you could also have, depending on how the law is written, I have a hard time believing somebody would be that. Well, they're politicians, so what I'm about to say makes sense. So bear with me. But I have a hard time believing that there's a politician out there that's going to say, all right, all the farmers out there that took and all the dirt contractors and construction companies and all those different things that took all the stuff off these machines, you have you have 24 months to put it back on, or we're going to fine you or whatever. I have a hard time believing that, because that'd be like, oh, cool. So you alienated about 95% of your voting base. That's great.
Right.
Good job. But they're also politicians, and they're not known for their intelligence. So we'll let that one. The other side of that too would be every time that there's a new administration that comes in that has anything that has to do with unfavorable quote unquote gun laws, come into play. There's a mad dash on AR-15s and those kind of things. Do we create a similar situation where the next administration, they're running on it like, hey, if we get in, these EPA standards are going back to the way they were, and they make it very clear, like, we're day one, we're going back to the way it was coming from the OEM factory side of it, and there's like some mad dash on buying tractors, because if you buy it now, you can go through.
Oh, don't. No, it's too quick. We're not done with the last one. Not yet.
But the thing about that is that if that does happen, that the amount of machines on the marketplace aren't nearly big enough to support that. If there were some kind of a run like
that. Imagine that. All of a sudden there's a run up in machines with 350 corn.
Right.
Nobody knows how they're paying for them, but God, look at them coming in.
And I think there's something there that you could point to. That's a scenario there as well. So I don't know. We're beating a dead horse now, but it's one of those things where if you look at the overarching kind of scenario that we're in as of today, I look at the manufacturers and they're saying, like, we love this idea, we didn't want to do this to start with, and we're going to work our way through this scenario, but we're also going to make sure that we don't have to retool a bunch of stuff on the other side. Again, they've been making Tier 3 engines for a long time. They've not stopped making Tier 3 engines because they ship all over the world. But that being said,
welcome to Mato Grosso.
Well, I think the thing about this that kills me, this whole EPA thing, is that why don't you just make the same standards that the railroads have to live by for off-road stuff, right? That's the reason that we have this whole 700 plus horsepower tractor engine thing that doesn't have DEF. It's all because when they wrote that EPA law, the railroads were like, well, you don't have to have that, right? So, it's just make everything the same way that you would do with the railroads, and it would be totally fine.
Yeah.
Just retrofit it that way. But
although be careful of that, because then you start combining off-road and railroad, and then all of a sudden ag has to start following some railroad rules and laws, and that's train wreck city.
Like putting like cross guards at the roads and stuff? Like, what are you talking about?
No, just all the checks and balances that they have to have for safety and all that kind of stuff.
I understand that. I understand all that. But I'm saying
their entire world is covered with rules and shit. So
that's welcome to corporate America, right?
Well, right.
So I mean, I think but I'm saying from the engine standpoint of how they treat emissions with that, why don't they just do the same thing?
Right.
On-road stuff's a different scenario. There's a lot more of them. I get all that, but to some extent, I don't really get all of it. But does
your truck have farm plates or commercial?
But you have, I think that's a
street carrier company, all farm plates. Look at that.
Yeah, I think that's the scenario there. with that whole situation, just treat it. Don't have this segment over here that, by the way, that doesn't even chip into the Social Security system or anything like that. They take care of all that stuff on their own. You have this whole scenario, like just make it all the same.
Right.
Not these little things that pop in and out, but that's another subject for another time. But at the end of the day, making those regulations across the board the same. I mean, because there's I can't remember what it is, horsepower wise, the least amount of horsepower you can have before you have to put a DEF system on it. And once you get above 700 horsepower, you don't have to get DEF. I want to say it's like 25 horsepower if I remember right, but I could be way wrong on that. But I can't remember the number, but somewhere in there.
I feel like you're right in that ballpark.
Yeah, so it's, you get this huge chunk of stuff out there that is operating inside of a bubble that other off-road stuff, because it's lower horsepower or higher horsepower, doesn't have to operate, and it doesn't make any sense,
Because as I recall, that there's buckets that have to have it and that don't, because there's that little goofy bucket where the 9,700, 9,600 choppers fall. They're not, I don't think they are 7, but they're in that, like above them has DEF and below them has DEF, but they're in that goofy little pocket where it has to do with number of engines in the world or something. And they're in that goofy little window where there aren't any, so they don't have to worry about it.
Yeah. So my thing is, if you're worried about emissions, be worried about emissions for everything. And if you're not for anything, then everything, it's either all or none. I think that'd be
join
easy.
me in Soundgarden land.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. But so I mean, there's some easy fixes here, but again, we're dealing with politicians, and nothing's easy because they got to complicate it to the point of complete and utter, President Trump, if you're listening to this, just do the same regulations that the railroads are doing, and it's all fine.
There you go.
Okay. All right,
you got DEF on your 4020? Yeah, it's called a straight pipe.
It's chrome though. It's nice.
Hell yeah. Here's a thing. The removal of DEF, and let's just call it over the top emissions, the removal of that would give the autonomous robots less to have to babysit.
True.
So that's an angle to look at.
Yep. True.
Since that is kind of becoming part of the industry at some point.
Yeah, no.
Waiting for that autonomous sweep auger, but here we go. The autonomous combine washer.
Yeah.
Take away the good job on the farm, still got all the crap ones.
Yeah. Well, that's just how it works, right? They automate the stuff that everybody wants to do, and not so much the stuff nobody wants.
There you go.
All right, man. Good place to stop. Aaron, folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what you're doing at High Plains Wholesale. What's the best way to do that?
Well, you can catch High Plains Wholesale on Facebook and TikTok. Have an account or page on both of those. I'm also on X, LinkedIn, and Facebook, just under my name, Aaron Fintel. Or text me, 308-760-1193.
Right on. Casey Seymour, you can find me anywhere on the social media sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, everywhere. So check it out. Want to watch the video version of this, go over to the Farm Journal's YouTube channel. You can see it there. You want to listen to it, check it out on AgWeb or anywhere else that you can find podcasts. You can find it all there. I want to thank everybody for being on the podcast today. And we'll catch everybody again next week. Aaron, see what you can come up with on the super DEF side of it, and maybe you can bring some of that newer stuff to your farm now. So now that doesn't have DEF on it that way.
Yeah, because that's been my holdup.
All right, buddy. Take care of yourself. I'll catch you next week. Let's go with some iron, folks. Out.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.